Hi, I'm Wendy Hollander, and I'm so excited that you're interested in doing our Botanical Basics drawing program, and also that you want to get the art supplies to get started with botanical drawing. So right here I've got our very compact kit, which is awesome, because this is all you're going to need to do quite a lot of work. So let's show you what we have in it. Let's start with our pencils. So we start with 12 polychromo oil-based color pencils, and this is enough to mix most any color you'll need in your drawing, which is great to start, but you don't have too many pencils to start. And then we include a set also of 12 watercolor pencils right here, also by Faber-Castell, the same company, and you can see similar or actually the exact same colors in many cases, which is great. You don't have to learn your colors twice. You've got the best colors for botanical work right here. The only difference between the two pencils in the way they look is that the oil-based polychromo regular color pencil is round in shape and the watercolor pencil is hexagon in shape. So I like to keep my pencils separate so I don't get them confused because we use them slightly differently. Then we have a really nice Tombow graphite pencil and a watercolor brush for using the watercolor, a portable cup for putting your water in to mix your colors. And then we have to use with the graphite paper in the beginning, graphite pencil in the beginning for measuring. We have a nice see-through ruler. And then in terms of erasers, we have a kneaded eraser. And then for really strong erasing, we have this sandpaper eraser for when you make mistakes. But you got to be very gentle on the paper with this. Then we have our little palette kit that I'm going to show you how to use it with the watercolors for mixing your colors. And a pencil sharpener, a really great pencil sharpener, pretty small and compact desktop sharpener, but works great for sharpening and very lightweight. And then we have a 5x7 size pad of hot press watercolor paper. Right now it's Stonehenge Aqua, which is great for doing this kind of work. And the cool thing about this pad of paper is it has a spiral binding so that you can unfasten the clasp and take out paper and put new paper in and get refills of the paper. So this is really convenient, especially for traveling. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to use our art supplies. And just want to also show you this pencil case, which we're just starting to stock now. It comes from Japan. It's really cute. I have my watercolor pencils in one and my polychromos in another. And what's great about it is you unzip it and you just pull it down, and then you can just sort of have it with you to work. It's very compact and it's really easy to see everything. So I really like that. And then I'm going to show you how to open and close your pad of paper. So in order to do that, come on in a little closer. And now I'm going to show you how you open your pad of paper. This is the nice hot press watercolor paper. And in the back of it, you can see there's this clip. And I just pull that out. You get used to doing this. Take out the clip. And that way I can just unwind it. This is basically opening the pad up. It's good to have it all close together like that, and then it comes out really easily. Just give it a little shake sometimes to keep it all together. And then what you can do is, if you're ready to change your paper, you can take it out and put new paper in, or you might want to take it out because you want to hang it on the wall or do something else with it. And then when you're ready to put it back, here's what you do. So I gather it all up so that all the holes are lined up. I like to put it at the edge of my table, then I can see it better. Then I just put it back in and wind it up, basically. And then I put the clip back in. Make sure I put this bottom little point right back in there. That's it. Back in use. There you go. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use your pencil sharpener. When you first get your pencil, I just want to show you, this is the point. And most people think that's a sharp point, but I just want to tell you, I don't consider that a sharp point. I'm going to show you what I consider a sharp point. So to use it, you squeeze these two things at the top here. Pull it out, not too far, about that far. Hold it with one hand and just turn it until you'll see, you will feel no resistance. And then check out that beautiful point. And that's a nice sharp point, and that's what you're going to want to use most of the time. Now, sometimes a couple of things can happen with this pencil sharpener. A pencil can break off inside, but you can easily take this handle here and undo that and pull it out and get rid of whatever clogging it up. That's one thing it does, which is great. And then it just goes back in and you tighten it. The other thing is some people pull that out too far and then they're like, can't get it in. But what I find is if you just start to sharpen it, it closes. How cool is that? So that's the pencil sharpener. Next, I want to show you how to use, we have two palettes. This is, you can see I've reused this many times, and you just wash it and it cleans off for the watercolor pencils. So you can use it this way or with one of these graphics film palettes too that are quite portable, and I'll show you how to use both. So what you do, and I think, is you take your watercolor pencil and draw some of it right on the palette, and I'm putting some down on both palettes. And then you take your brush, dip it in some water, and you just kind of stir it into the pigment that you've drawn on the palette, and it turns into paint. It's really simple and very convenient to work this way. And so here I'm showing you just laying down some color, and now I'm showing you on the Duralar film the same idea. And you can, practice laying down your watercolor, and you can add some water in to gradate the color to have it go from dark to light. Now I'm putting down some couple other colors. I'm going to do some yellow and some orange and show you that this is a great way to mix color. So if I want to get like a yellow orangey color, kind of like that cherry tomato I have on my paper there, I can mix a color and then I can test it. So here I am stirring it, mixing it, and then you can just put it down. And that's how you use the watercolor. It's very convenient. And now I'm looking for another color. Okay, so now what I want to do is show you how to use the technique of combining the watercolor pencil with the color pencil. And I'm just going to do a simple drawing of this small tomato. I'm measuring it so it's life size. I'm using my see-through ruler, and I'm just lightly with a graphite pencil drawing the outline of the tomato. And I'm going to try to put some of that stem with those little bits of leaf-like structures called sepals in. And very light drawing with the graphite pencil. And once I've got that done, I'm picking up a earth green polychromo colored pencil. So this is the oil base color pencil, and I'm going to do a grisaille toning layer. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading on my shadow side to indicate where the shadow is. And I'm going to feather that color up into the body of the tomato, make it a gradual transition. This is how you get really nice three-dimensional form. And I like to use a grisaille technique where I use a neutral color first to do my toning, and I'm going to leave a nice highlight on the upper left side. And then I am going to take some of the color that I've mixed on the palette. I'm showing you that again. So now I'm going to go right over that polychromo with watercolor. And you'll see that it's sort of a translucent effect so that the polychromo shows through a little bit with the watercolor. And I can dip my brush in water and spread the paint a little bit more, getting it lighter and lighter until it gets to that highlight, and I can dab my brush and get rid of the pigment, add a little more water like this, just to spread it and get that nice graduated tone. And so now that was one way to do it, where I put down the polychromo color pencil first, then watercolor on top, and then I let that dry. But meanwhile, I'm going to show you starting with watercolor. So I like to, another idea is to wet your whole area first with plain water. Let it sink in for a few seconds. And then I'm going to get the paint again that I've mixed up. And this way your watercolor will spread rather than stopping and not moving. This way, when you put it down, you see that how it spreads a little bit, creating edges that are not sharp, but that move a little bit and are nice slow transition from light to dark and not a sharp edge, so that the watercolor spreads nicely. So that's one way, another way to do it. Doing the watercolor first on top of some plain water. And again, you let that dry. And now I'm going to show you a couple more things. So I put down some plain water, and I'm putting the color over that to show you how it just spreads, so you get edging that isn't a sharp edge, but a very subtle variation. And there, when you put the color down without water first, it doesn't spread as much, and I just want you to see the difference. So now I'm going to take a little green watercolor and fill it in on the stem and the sepals on the tomato. And then I'm going to let that dry for a while so that I can work on top of it with color pencils. Meanwhile, I'm going to show you my feathering technique, just going from dark to light here. The technique with that earth green pencil. And I like to switch directions when I lay down tone so that it's very subtle. And I'll even move my paper to get a more natural way of stroking the paper. And there's the feathering in between, just to sort of make it a graduated tone variation from dark to light. And again, now I'm going in a different direction. I continue to vary my directions, and then it sort of fills in the texture. And now I'm going to show you another, using a dark sepia colored pencil first, so you can see that. And I'm using tiny little circles to really try to just fill in the texture and get an even transition from dark to light. You'll find your own way to use your strokes. Now I'm showing you what happens when you've let your watercolor dry, and you can go right over it now with the regular polychromo color pencils to build your layers to get that dark to light transition and blend and mix all your colors together. So here I'm using green. It's a polychromo green pencil. And what's happened, because I've laid down the watercolor first, is rather than adding texture which will show through a white background. Now you can see there, I'm putting the pencil down where there isn't any watercolor, as opposed to here where it's over the watercolor, and you can see the difference. So that I've already gotten rid of some of the lighter layers of the paper. So my greens will blend smoother and will have more saturated color quicker. I've got my orange tomato here, and I want to show you that I'm adding sort of a neutral earth green color over my yellow orange color to simulate what would actually be the shadow areas. And I blend that with some orange and some yellow to really try to create my tomato. What colors would I use on my tomato to create the three-dimensional tomato, along with highlights, midtones, and shadow areas. And so I use that earth green to give me the shadow areas on an orange tomato. And I can even brighten with some yellow. You can just see the layers are transparent, so you can go back and forth till you get it as close as you want to get it, so that you get very realistic color and you get that three-dimensional quality of shadows, midtones, and highlighted areas. I've dipped into my palette here. I'm showing you mixing the yellow and the orange. You can even go over. I've done a couple of layers of watercolor, then I put the colored pencils on top. Now I'm showing you that I can even add watercolor on top of all of that. And the layers are transparent, so things kind of blend together. And now I've got some good vibrant color that looks very much to me like all the different values I see in that real tomato. And I'm putting it right on top of the drawn tomato here, starting by first wetting the paper where the tomato is drawn, letting the water seep in, then putting the watercolor on top. And that's a way of having your watercolor spread, because otherwise when you put your watercolor down, if your paper isn't wet, the watercolor just sits there. It doesn't move. And I want it to just sort of spread a bit so that I get rid of I don't have harsh lines created where the watercolor goes down and stops. If the paper's a little bit wet, it helps spread that watercolor. So there's a few ways obviously to do this, and I'm just showing you a couple of different ways to use these watercolors and color pencils together. It's so much fun, isn't it? I mean, there's really, what I like about it is you have more control with the watercolor this way, because you can do some watercolor and then where you need fine detail and sharp edges and things like that, you go in with the color pencils on top. Then you can sort of blend a bit more like this and get a really nice highlight. So now I'm I'm just showing you some other things. So here's my palette. I'm showing you, I'm putting down some pink and some blue to try to mix those colors of those hydrangeas right there. It's really a fun way to kind of blend. So I'm showing you both of those there, and now I've got a purple hydrangea petal. So I'm going to mix the pink and blue together to get my violet, and I also have violet color. Yeah, so really can get some really nice color mixing. Okay, here's a leaf now. Let's see what we can do with a leaf. I'm putting down a base color of a green watercolor first to get my leaf started. And again, I'm trying to just graduate that a little bit from dark to light, because that's what I'm going to be doing most of the time on my painting, right? And here I'm showing you, if I put down clean water first on the paper, get some water on the paper to let it sink in, and then I take the watercolor. You see how it spreads rather than just stopping when it hits the paper. And here's my leaf. I'm going to show you about using veining a little bit and how you can create that. So here I'm just drawing lightly with a graphite pencil the pattern created by these net veined leaves. This is a hydrangea leaf. I'm just approximating lightly how I would be drawing the veins, and I'm very careful when I draw my veins. And this is an embossing tool now. And I want to show you what happens. I'm pressing into the paper to create a recessed area, and now a little smaller
vein for those secondary veins. And I draw carefully with the embossing tool to make it look natural. I try not to make it look too stiff. I really want it to look very natural, but I want it to look like those light color veins there. So now I'm showing you what happens if you emboss into the paper and then you go over it with the colored pencil. You see you're left with lighter areas that resist the pencil. And that helps, that's one way of creating your veining. There's so many ways to create veining, but this is a nice way to think about it. So here I'm putting down just some layers of the green first to show you how it works. And you can just keep blending different colors to get more of the shadows on the green. And so now I've laid down some dark sepia and some green to get this leaf started, but you can still see there's a lot of white texture of the paper. And so if I was to completely do my leaf with just the color pencils, I've got to do lots and lots of layers to get the saturated color that I'm going to want to get. Okay, and so right here I just want to show you how once on this tomato the watercolor is dry, I can go back in with those fine details I was talking about with the colored pencils. And now I'm just working a bit on my stem and my overlaps and my sepals a bit. And I'm using a dark sepia for that. And now, you know, because I practice, you can see that in the color blend above for the tomato itself. But here I'm blending in the green and the dark sepia to create that area. And now here I am going in to try to make my tomato look vibrant and three-dimensional and really have that yellowy, orangey color in it, but yet have shadows and highlights as needed. So I'm putting a light layer on top. Tiny little strokes is one of the ways I like to fill in so that I don't get an area of texture that's too busy looking. I want it to be quiet and all over looking. Sometimes my strokes show, sometimes they don't, but there are ways to blend them in. And here again, remember I told you I took that earth green for the shadowing, and I'm putting that over right now, carefully. Always trying to make my tomato look as three-dimensional as possible. Tiny little strokes, again, you can see I'm using. Again, you're going to find your own way to do this. So many ways to do it. I'll tell you, I don't even do it the same way twice. I'm always varying my techniques and varying my steps a bit. Now I'm sort of getting closer to that edge, trying to make it a little sharper and cleaner. And you know, you take your time with this. You build your layers very slowly. Tiny little circles again. I often use tiny little circles, but not always. It really, you know, in a round form, it's a good way to do it. So now a layer of orange, and now a layer of yellow. I'm building this tomato slowly. I don't want to rush it. I want to show you how, in real time, how you might want to approach this. And now I'm taking another golden kind of ochre color to go on top of that. You know, right now my tomato is still pretty pale, and I want to get it really bright, vibrant, and get really good range of values from dark to light, good color variation, all of those things. So I take my time. I continue to look back at my real tomato. And I just slowly build these layers. This is ivory now, and this is a technique called burnishing. when I'm about 3/4 of the way done, I start to apply ivory to blend all my colors together, especially around my highlight. Then I reapply colors on top of the ivory. You can see how vibrant now that yellow is getting. And at this stage of the game, maybe I'm starting to press a little bit harder. You know, and now back and forth, here's the orange or red on top of that yellow. And I keep going over all the areas. I get my highlights good, and then I get slightly to the midtones and then the darker values. I just keep building this very, very slowly and patiently. And believe it or not, this is really relaxing and fun to do. And I often put on music or I listen to a book on tape or something so that while I'm taking my time building my layers, I'm not getting impatient, you know, and thinking about all the things I need to do, like the laundry or cooking or whatever it is. I'd rather just focus on this drawing and take my time with it and enjoy it and keep it as a nice slow meditation of drawing. And I'm going really slowly because on a light palish orangey yellow tomato, I need to build my layers slower perhaps than I might on a color that in the end will be darker. So here again, I'm burnishing again, believe it or not. I just didn't want to build this tomato too quickly, so I'm going very slowly. And then I go inside that highlight a little bit to break it up because I want my highlight to shimmer. I don't want it to look like an empty hole, and that's a tricky technique, so it takes a little time to get that. Okay, so now here I'm just going back in a little bit more with some darker values and just firming up my tomato. I must have 100 layers on here by now, wouldn't you say? Anybody out there counting? So it's a lot of layering. And then towards the end, I do start to press harder. And that's my tomato. Now I'm checking my watercolor is dry here, and I'm going to emboss as I showed you before. I'm going to emboss the veining on top of that green watercolor so that my veining is not the white of the paper, but is kind of green, just like if you look over at the leaf on the right. You see how it's sort of a light green? So I'm just simulating putting in some veins, and then I put green on top, and this will mix up much quicker. It will get saturated and look like a real leaf much quicker than if I had no watercolor below it. Because, you know, I don't want the veining to be white. I actually want it to be like this, to have some green in it. And I can make, you know, go in very close to the veining if I want to make it feel like it's sitting on top, or, you know, get it darker and lighter around it. So many ways to do this. Again, you want to build your layers very slowly. Take your time, really enjoy it. I even go right inside those embossed areas a little bit so that they're not solid, but I vary the value in there. And so I do take my pencil sometimes and get right in there a little bit. Here I'm just going over the whole thing quickly to sort of show you the idea of using an embosser with the watercolor layers and then the color pencil on top. And now I'm showing you how I can erase a bit if I want to have what's called a reflective highlight on the edge of my tomato. That's one of the other things I do love about these pencils, is you actually can erase a little bit. And then there's a strong eraser here, which I only recommend using this if you're really trying to get rid of something because it could tear up your paper, but look how nicely that erased. And this is a fine eraser. I love this eraser because you can have control over how you're erasing, and you can clean your edges this way. So there's a lot of flexibility with these materials. It's simple to use. And so here I'm just going over again to, after I erased a bit on that edge, to create that lighter area on the right side of the tomato, which is called the reflective highlight. There you can see it close up. And now with some color pencils and darker colors, I'm going in on that idea of the leaf with the veining to show you a little bit more. This was the one where I did it on the white paper, so you can see how my veins are still white. And now I'm just going to go in here and saturate that color a bit more. So this is not having used any watercolor, and this is where I used the watercolor. I'm going in and saturating more too now with colors and darkening, and just, continuing to saturate and build my layers of color. You can see how I can go right inside some of the veining too, to make it, as again, not so overpoweringly light. And now I'm just sort of taking a very thin pencil on my edges. It's a harder, darker pencil so that I can get crisper edging if I want, to sort of fill in on the edge a bit and blend the color in. So it's not an outline, but just sort of a dark edge that defines the tomato a little bit. And that's it. And now I hope you enjoyed this introduction to using the materials and some of the basic techniques. Have fun.